Forest Follies is one of Cuphead's 6 run and gun stages, which are traditional platforming levels. These are a minority and completely optional. Cuphead is primarily focused on boss fights, of which there are a mandatory 19 for beating the game. And yet, despite this, Forest Follies finds itself as part of the rad for nearly every Cuphead speedrunning category, including 80%. Not only that, it always ends up being the first stage we play, and it tends to kill a lot of runs as soon as they begin, giving it an infamy for being a big source of early resets. So in this video, we will go over this stage, why it's part of so many Cuphead speedruns, and what makes it such a big hurdle. So the first question we're going to answer is, why even play this stage in the first place, since it's optional? Well, run and gun stages have coins that can be collected, which can then be brought to Porkrin's shop to purchase additional weapons or charms. And it's precisely these weapons that are the appeal. When starting a new playthrough, we will only be equipped with a single basic weapon, the pea shooter. We can certainly beat every boss in the game with it, but it doesn't deal that much damage. So run and guns are there to offer us a sort of proposal. We can spend the time to play them, and we will be rewarded with weapons that will be able to make shorter work of bosses. And generally speaking, this is pretty much always worth doing. Excluding historical routes that are now pretty much defunct, every 80% category is able to save more than enough time from the weapons it's able to buy from the shop to offset the time spent playing the run and gun. And out of the 2 run and guns present in aisle 1, Forest Follies is both closer and faster than the other one, Treetop Travel. So this run and gun is pretty much a staple of most Cuphead speedruns. The only main category that doesn't go through it is low percent, whose objective is to beat the game while doing the minimum amount possible, and so it is straight up forbidden from playing the stage, being forced to play the entire game with a pea shooter. So with all that being said, what makes this stage so difficult? Well, let's take a closer look at the stage. First, a quick note about how we want to move through the stage. The fastest movement option is to hold right and dash, but if we were to simply try to dash over and over, we would quickly notice that there's a cooldown that limits how often we can dash. A better technique comes in the form of jump cancelling. At the end of each dash, we have 9 frames of time where we can buffer a jump. As soon as this jump begins, our dash cooldown basically gets cancelled, so we have an opportunity to dash again. By chaining jumps into jump dashes, we can fit in a few more dashes than we normally would be able to throughout this stage. Also, it is ideal to pretty much hold down the shoot button at all times. A lot of enemies in this stage die in one hit, so the pea shooter's quick fire rate and big range come in very handy for clearing enemies in front of us. Alright, so let's finally go over this stage at a basic level. We go through a short and simple section at the start, and immediately have to take a small detour to grab the 4th coin. We have 5 coins available to us in this level, and to get the weapons we want, we usually have to grab all 5 coins, so this run of this level will assume that that is indeed the case. With a bit of a precise jump, it is possible to barely touch this coin without having to make use of the moving platform, which is a deal. We also have to pay attention to a flower that can spawn below the coin and hit us. To counter it, we can sometimes hit it with a pea shooter shot fired diagonally down. Then we make our way to the next section, making sure to snap the mini goopy on the log. We collect the 2nd coin and perform a series of specific dashes to get us through the next section. We can make use of the platform drop mechanic to make more optimal movement here. We grab the 3rd coin with the help of a parry on the pink spiky ball, then barely get 5 dashes off in the next section before dashing across the pit that's supposed to act as a jump dashing tutorial of sorts, in case you couldn't figure it out in the tutorial. We then grab the 4th coin high on the screen, then make our way towards the Acorn Maker, which will be destroyed in just a few seconds of shooting it. We then make it through the last section of the stage, carefully avoiding the jumpers, grabbing the 5th and final coin, and then finally hitting the finishing line. This is an example of a run through the stage making use of solid movement. Some parts of the stage are already a little tight, but there's nothing too difficult here as of yet. But here come a few complications that elevate the stage difficulty significantly. Shooting the Acorn Maker is not that slow and absolutely recommended for anyone starting out as a speedrunner of this game over doing anything fancy. However, it is possible to completely skip having to do this. As a matter of fact, there's many multiple methods available to do this. Cue the montage. Ledge clip. We can frame perfectly clip through the ledge under it and make it onto the other side. Ninja clip. We can hug the invisible wall midway through the Acorn Maker and press jump and EX on the same frame to clip through it. Two-tone hop. We can take damage from the Acorn Maker, hug the invisible wall, face away, and jump in order to get hit a 2nd time towards the peak of our jump, which will get us over that invisible wall. The TSS MTIC dash. Same as a two-tone hop, but taking damage off of a mini goopy earlier in the stage, then quickly making it over to the Acorn Maker before iframes run out to take the 2nd hit. By the way, TSS MTIC stands for This Saves So Much Time It's Crazy. It turned out to be slower than other methods. Rare Pink Butterfly. If a pink butterfly happens to randomly spawn in front of the Acorn Maker, then we can just parry it to get over it. Mushroom Spore. By baiting the mushrooms on the upper ledge to shoot at us, sometimes we will get a pink spore that we can then bring down into the lower area and parry it to get us over the Acorn Maker. Island Wall. A very difficult wall clip method. By taking damage, jumping, dashing at a frame perfect moment, then jumping on the first frame we land again, we can zip right through. Crackshot EX. By placing a Crackshot EX, we can then parry it and use it to get over the Acorn Maker. Double jump over it as Miss Chalice. If we're playing as Chalice, just double jump over it. Lol. Whetstone. The Whetstone charm allows us to parry the Acorn Maker and also just get up and over it. Super R2. By activating Super R2 towards the peak of our jump, we can use the extra bounce it gives us to hop over it. Co-op Ghost. By playing in co-op mode and having one of the two players die near the Acorn Maker, they can be parried and used to get over the Acorn Maker. The second player will also be able to hop over the machine when coming back to life. That's all the methods I'm aware of, at least. If I missed any, let me know in the comments. Some of these methods are unavailable at the start of a new run, or slower than just killing the Acorn Maker, however. The fastest option is the ledge clip, which saves around 4 seconds. However, this is frame perfect and was patched out starting from Cuphead version 1.2. So if playing on a newer version or just looking for more consistency, the ninja clip is a great choice too, that in a vacuum is only about 1 second slower than the ledge clip. These tricks are a little difficult, particularly the ledge clip. It's not necessary to get it on the first try, but because it requires sacrificing at least 1 HP to perform, we only have a limited amount of attempts before we run out of health and can't do it anymore. And because each failed attempt loses about 1 second, it can be a big source of time loss and even resets early in the run. However, this isn't the only trick present in the stage. There's another one, and that is... Remember how we're grabbing the third coin in the stage with the help of a parry? Well, the problem with this is that it will lose us time. If you watched my video on Cuphead's results screen, you may have already figured out why, but essentially grabbing any parries during the stage will result in the following scoreboard counting the 1 parry we got, losing us 0.8 seconds, on top of the 0.16 seconds coming from the screen freezing for effect right after we get this parry. This means that the overall time loss from grabbing this 1 parry is close to a full second. And here's where the parry skip comes in. Normally this cone is too high to be able to grab it in a single jump, but all we have to do is get hit towards the peak of this ball's vertical trajectory, and the hop we get from that damage boost will give us the extra height we need to be able to touch this coin. This is pretty good, however it will cost us 1 HP to perform, and since we already have to spend at least 1 HP to pull off any of the fast Acorn Skip methods, this means that we don't have any room for mistakes elsewhere in the level. Any unnecessary hits will immediately prevent us from performing Parry Skip or even Acorn Skip. Additionally, since we're skipping this parry, we also won't get the card that would allow us to use an EX move, meaning that we can't perform Ninja Clip, and we also won't be able to perform other fast methods like the Two-Tone Hop or the TSSM TSC Dash, since they would require taking 2 HP of damage all by themselves, which we won't have at our disposal after the parry skip. Thus the only fast methods available becomes the rare pink butterfly, which almost never shows up quickly, and the ledge clip. Since this trick doesn't work starting from Cuphead version 1.2, this means that any runs performed on newer versions of Cuphead, like any of the DLC runs, will opt to not go for the parry skip, otherwise they wouldn't be able to go for Acorn Skip. However, any percent 1.1 plus runs can go for both tricks if the runner so chooses, and this can be challenging. The reason why is not immediately obvious. After all, putting aside the reduced room for mistakes that going for parry skip creates, this trick doesn't seem hard at all, right? You just get hit at the peak of the ball cycle and that's it, right? Yes, it is that easy. But the problem is actually the ball cycle itself. When we start the level, the ball always starts in the same position and then begins going up and down. In other words, it works off of a level timer, and the position it will be at when we get to it will change depending on how fast or slow of a run of the level we get. This is important because we can only perform parry skip when the ball is at a high position, so if we get there too slow, then we will have to wait an additional cycle, which can take around 0.7 seconds. In other words yet, this is a kind of frame roll, so imagine your favorite boss of choice to make this analogy work. And the thing is, the optimal cycle to do this parry skip on is pretty darn tight. There's the spot here at the start when grabbing the first coin, where letting go of right as little as possible is very helpful. Then ideally we never let go of right again until the parry skip and we get off all the dashes we need. The hardest part is the section right before the parry skip, where we want to land just past this mushroom, immediately drop through the log, and perform a series of very tight dashes in order to be able to start the jump from this log as fast as possible, then dash towards the ball and hit it just as it's starting to go back down. Since we're hitting it from the left, it's also important to tap the D-pad to the left before getting hit in order to receive knockback towards the right, otherwise we might not actually be able to grab this coin. To top it all off, while trying to perform these movements, there's an acorn that will spawn at this moment in time that will sometimes get in the way. To counteract it, we want to shoot our pea shooter upright while approaching the ball, which will sometimes allow us to kill it. These inputs are all pretty tough, and will require us to play the stage pretty tight, increasing our chance to make mistakes and get hit early somewhere, which will snowball into a bigger time loss since we won't now be able to do parry skip at all. So all in all, how impactful is this stage? Well, funnily enough, the answer is not that much. For a top runner, even keeping a bit of a disastrous attempt where neither parry skip nor acorn skip can be performed will only really lose around 6 seconds at most. This is a decent amount, but not nearly as big as the time variances that a number of bosses exhibit in this game just from randomness alone. So why does this stage have the fame it does for being such a big run killer? Well, it's mainly for one single reason. Because it's the first stage. Really, if this level was placed further into the run, we would be much more willing to accept a few seconds of time loss in order to just continue the pace we have going. But because the time investment to just restart the run from the beginning is fairly little, then a few seconds of time loss may be worth resetting over. However, I think it's very easy to bring this idea too far to the extreme. A lot of speedrunners, especially beginners, will reset at the first mistake, no matter how small, and as a result, they get stuck in this stage or the early game and rarely make it through the later, more impactful and more difficult portions of the game. I definitely used to be that kind of player myself, starting out. So my strong recommendation to other Cuphead speedrunners is the following. If you're not already a top runner, avoid resetting in this stage at nearly all costs. Getting to play the rest of the game not only promises bigger potential time saves, but also provides more natural practice at the entire game, which is a lot more important than squeezing out an extra few seconds at the very beginning of the run. That being said, Forest Follies is in fact a pretty tough stage, and for those who actually require a pretty good run of this level in order to get a new personal best, then this stage signifies a pretty difficult start to a pretty difficult run. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel as well as to my second channel where I post all my speedruns. Take care!